everyone. Glad you could take some time out of your day to join us. What are we going to do today? We're going to be looking at new stuff, new tech in the world of ChatGPT. So we're going to be focused on not the core, not the stuff that everybody has been using, which is great. There are new things that have been recently released that are in testing, and that's going to be the name of the game. We're going to look at new stuff in ChatGPT and a cousin to ChatGPT, which is AutoGPT, a really exciting agent. And so when I was thinking about what was going on this week, in addition to making sure that AutoGPT was going to run beautifully with the latest version that just came out this week, I wanted to give you some exposure to some news information too, because there have been a lot of changes that have just been occurring over the last few weeks. So we are going to be touching on some new stuff that I had even planned for that had just dropped in the last week or two. Okay, so there's a lot of interesting stuff and a lot of interesting developments with respect to ChatGPT, and that is our focus today. Okay, so now what are we focused on? New developments, some alpha and beta features that are going to be really, really helpful to you, and uh, demo AutoGPT. And I was chatting with you folks before the show began, and I thought it was really interesting that I didn't see anybody use AutoGPT yet, but it has been making a lot of news. If any of you have used AutoGPT before, please do share that your experiences. My experiences have been built over the course of the last 4 versions of the product that you can get. It's pretty challenging to get working, and it's kind of an interesting project, and we would consider it experimental. Okay, great. So what is new with respect to ChatGPT? There's a few new things that a lot of people aren't aware of. We're today going to talk a little bit about data privacy and the new data controls. I think that's actually probably the most important feature that everybody who touches ChatGPT should be aware of. So we are going to hit that. And in the pre-show, I thought it was really interesting that one of the chats was a discussion of Apple Computer and Apple Computer banning ChatGPT because of concerns regarding intellectual property, proprietary information, trade secrets, that sort of thing, which is a real challenge in today's day and age. There's also a brand new iOS app that was released literally yesterday. We're going to talk just a little bit about that to make sure that you understand some of the caveats of that one. And then we're going to talk about some of the new alpha and beta features. And what was interesting is some of the alpha features transitioned to beta since this webinar was conceived. And some of you may have access to some or all of the features we're going to talk about, but they are really constricted, okay? Even one of the alpha features that I have access to is not widely available, okay? Cool. All right. So this is an interesting day, I think, because unlike previous sessions that we've done, I think there are going to be some things that a lot of you just simply weren't aware of. And this was something that uh, I learned about from Discord. It was an official announcement. There's a new iOS app from OpenAI for ChatGPT. Here's why this matters, okay? So for a really long time, this was really the realm of a web app, okay? Which means you point your web browser, you log in, things like that. And so there were a lot of people who were thinking, you know what, I want this on my phone, but I want to make sure that that I'm using the trusted application. And so previously, if you did search for ChatGPT in the App Store of iOS, you're going to get a lot of unsanctioned apps. Okay, now what's the problem here with the unsanctioned apps? So literally right now, you could go, don't distract yourself too much. You could go to the App Store of iOS and say ChatGPT, and you're going to get tons of hits, right? But who makes ChatGPT? Let's just make sure that we understand who makes ChatGPT. It's made by OpenAI, okay? And so there are all these kind of unsanctioned apps, and that has a huge risk, okay? So I would encourage you to only use generative AI directly from the vendor who creates it to mitigate your risk, because you're possibly going to be putting in information in there that you just don't want to get out to the wild, okay? And because of that, you would want to make sure that you're using this specific version of the ChatGPT app and not something that is homegrown, because the reality is people can make competitive apps for ChatGPT. So it is available. It's actually super tricky to find it in the App Store even now because of what a mess the App Store is in Apple, because of their algorithm to promote. So I would encourage you, if you are interested, actually fire up Discord, get uh, OpenAI set up as a Discord server that you're listening to, and look for the announcements that way. And I think that is a good way to go. Okay. But I use ChatGPT a lot, and it is nice to be able to have that directly on my phone without worrying about logging in via a web browser. Okay. So we've got some other stuff though. And let's just expose you to what we're going to see today, okay? I want to get right in to our interface, and this is what we're going to talk about. So you might be going, all right, I don't even know what we're going to hit today, okay? So let's start by going into ChatGPT, and I'm going to give you a tour of what is on tap, okay? So I'm going to hover over. Now, I am a Plus subscriber. So the first thing is, if you aren't a Plus subscriber, you're not going to have access to GPT-4 yet. And you may not have access to some of these other features, okay? So in my prior webinar, we talked about GPT-4, which is super great, very powerful, but it does have some limitations, okay? So that's considered the default. We're not going to talk about GPT-4 today. We're going to talk about mostly with browsing, the plugins that are available. I'm probably going to save Code Interpreter for a totally different session. Do any of you have access to the Code Interpreter? I'm really curious because this is really, really limited. And I felt like I was knighted when I got this. Okay, so User Guy has access. This is the coolest thing in ChatGPT, in my opinion. Okay, but it's new, and I want to have a really good show to put on for you guys. And so you can expect that just in a few short weeks that we're going to do a dedicated session on the code interpreter. Now, if you're thinking, well, I'm not a coder, I'm not familiar with Python or whatever, that's not what this is about. This is one of the most sophisticated tools available. You don't need any coding. It actually runs code for you. And I think this is going to be a game changer for people like data science and knowledge workers. Okay. So it's very, very cool. But that won't be our focus today. Okay. So let's talk for a moment about, oh, and the other thing we're going to talk about is AutoGPT. So I've got AutoGPT running, and you can see this is driven by code. So I'm in an IDE running AutoGPT right now, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit. And it's kind of like a cooking show. I've got some things baking in the background, and one of the things about this cooking show for AutoGPT is I might have some rejects in AutoGPT. It's very, very unpredictable. It's considered experimental. And so we're not going to get fixated on perfection with AutoGPT, but it is a really cool thing. And by the way, there's a brand new version that came out this week that I think is a whole lot better. 3.1 specifically, a lot better. So let's go over to something that I think is the most important thing for you to educate anybody in your sphere of influence. Okay. So, you folks came in, which is a sign that you have some interest in generative AI for whatever reason. You're worried about it, you want to use it, you want to learn more about it. Doesn't really matter what that reason is. The most important thing for you to understand about generative AI is how to control the data that you put in. Okay? So we need to be good stewards of the planet that we're on. And we know all of the hubbub, which is very meaningful regarding AI. It's very, very meaningful with regards to the concerns that we have. And one of the concerns that we have is data privacy. It's not the only concern, right? But a new feature, this came out in April, is the data controls feature. So it's about a month old. And any one of you that speaks to somebody in your proximity in respect to ChatGPT should be aware that this data controls feature now exists. Now, here's the reason why we need to care about this. Now, let's play out a hypothetical. We trust OpenAI. We trust OpenAI and we think they're probably not going to mess with my data in a way that we don't want them to. So that's kind of on the sort of most open, receptive postures. But if we go ahead and click this Learn More button, what we're going to see is data controls allow you to turn off the chat history. So, that's just a byproduct of this. That's not the thing that's important. What it also does is it controls whether the conversations, meaning whatever you put in to ChatGPT, is going to be used for the training model. Okay. So the training model used by ChatGPT is what we call a large language model. And it's this beast of a lot of parameters that continue to grow over time. And the chats that you interface with are training and improving that model. So there's a side benefit of them sucking in your chats, using that to improve their model. And we all benefit from that. But if you were doing anything with sensitive data, first, you might not actually want to put in anything that's sensitive in nature. Okay, so that's the first check to do. But let's say you've come to the conclusion that you're okay with the data sensitivity, and then you've decided you're going to put in that information. The reality is, it's not a bad idea to turn off the chat history and training. It says there, right? It's not going to use what we have for training. So what's interesting is this would go a long way for Apple Computer and other organizations that don't want their employees' data to be used for training. Okay. So I think that's really, really important. And look, it's really crazy. Okay. So I've lost my chat history. And newer licenses for ChatGPT are going to be able to do this for an organization. A lot of us are still using like private, our own homespun uh, ChatGPT logins and things like that. But as this system gets more powerful over time, what we're going to find is that businesses that choose to use this are going to entitle their users for ChatGPT, and by doing so, they are going to they're going to also be able to control it. Okay, they're going to say, you know what, I don't want chat history and for anything to be used in the training model. Okay, cool. Okay. Now, AC Cannon says, wouldn't that lose a large functionality by removing the chat history? Yeah, it makes it a lot different to use, right? We leverage the chat history pretty heavily, but you have to know how to control this. So we love the convenience of the chat history, but if that means through the concerns that we have that we can't use it at all, I'd rather have us use something, you know? So that's a really important feature. Okay. So let's go back. What are we talking about today? What the heck are we talking about today? The next thing that I want to share with you, and we're going to start this, is one of the big focuses of this webinar, and that is AutoGPT. Now, I think I saw one person say they've used AutoGPT. Is that about right? One person used AutoGPT? And got a question, how is ChatGPT going to affect cybersecurity? In a lot of ways. In a lot of ways. For good, for bad. It's almost too big of a topic for me to hit. Okay, so good. I also have, and I'm not in a place to talk about Cobalt Horde. Okay. And we've got a lot to talk about today. Cool. All right, so AutoGPT. I've actually got this running in the background, and it's cooking up some research that I had it begun for me uh, on new technologies for batteries. Okay, and I set it loose. What this is it's classified as an agent. Now, an agent is something that you can kind of point in a direction and say, go this way, and after you go that way, you're going to be able to set it loose and go to sleep, walk away, write emails, do your regular job. And all the while, it's going to iterate something in the background and try to do what you asked it to do. So one of the interesting challenges with ChatGPT that we don't always kind of feel really palpable is we've got to be sitting in front of a computer or now our phone with the app, and we're entering in things manually, right? So the challenge is we've got to babysit ChatGPT. So it's good for like one-offs, it's good for a quick response. But what if I wanted to do something really, really sophisticated, a project that's going to grow over time, and that's going to mean I'm going to have to babysit so aggressively that, yeah, it might accelerate my work, but this form of agent is kind of like a little robot, almost like in the world of Star Wars, R2D2. So Luke could say to R2D2, I'd like you to do this for me, shut down all the trash compactors on the detention facility, and it's going to go out there and it's going to try to figure out how to do that. Okay. So you can do the same thing with AutoGPT. Now, there's a competitive product, and the two big agents that are really out there are AutoGPT and Baby AGI. Baby AGI, I don't have that much experience with it because my focus has been AutoGPT. There are more people working on AutoGPT. It has a little bit more upside, but both are proving to be really, really exciting. Now, here's why it matters. Okay? Here's why it matters. It's capable of browsing the web. Now, new tech from Bard and new tech from ChatGPT can browse the web. Okay. It has an integrated memory system. It literally fires off a database when you run this, and the database functions as memory. So if you've used ChatGPT a lot, what you've noticed is that really large conversations degrade over time because there's a token limit. Token limit still has some consequences, but it's greatly minimized because we have the ability to have huge databases of memory. Okay. It can work autonomously, which means we don't have to babysit. It can work with files, and it can build Python code to do really sophisticated things. And it'll use recursive logic, which means it goes in over and over again. So let's go in right now and see what's going on here with AutoGPT. Before today's event, I had it working on something that wasn't going to be my main focus today, which was just a little bit of a research assistant. Let's play out a hypothetical. I want to research new battery technologies. And by new, I mean stuff that's super current. So that means I'm going to be doing something that ChatGPT, at least without the browsing functionality, is not well suited for, because ChatGPT is cut off from the web and it's limited to 2021 information. But if I'm looking for new battery technology, then what I'm going to be thinking about is I've got to have latest and greatest. Okay. And so it's actually doing this work. It's been doing this work for 4 hours. And I've had to stop and start it. It's gone off on some crazy, crazy tangents. And I think I've asked it to do something that it's not beautiful at. Now, I want you to see something. I am in this I'm in the IDE that I use, which is a Python development environment called PyCharm. You can work with AutoGPT in a lot of different places. This is just what I prefer. But I want you to see all of these files. Oh yeah, and we're absolutely using GPT-4. So I see, whoa, your bill. Yes, I'm absolutely using GPT-4. I did get it lit up with the API for GPT-4, and I'll tell you, if you're not using GPT-4, you you probably want to wait. Okay. But these are all sorts of files that it's kicked out, and I don't know what they read. Okay, so this is a little bit of some research that it was doing. Okay, I'm going to clear this off because it's not going to be our big demo of the day, but it is working and it's doing some stuff and it's researching the web, and we're going to we're going to talk about that. This is called PyCharm, by the way, Efren. PyCharm, which is a really, really mainstream, popular, easy to use development environment. Okay. Yep. Okay, let's go back. So that is a little bit about AutoGPT. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of what I think is really important to be considerate of for AutoGPT specifically. Okay. So, first, an absolute requirement is you need to be a Plus subscriber, which gives you access at a minimum to the API keys. Okay. So you do need to be a Plus subscriber to get your own API key. And we're not using the web interface. So if you have access to GPT-4 in the web interface, that doesn't mean you have access to the GPT-4 API. You have to specifically request that, and it actually took me a while to get it. I was borrowing somebody's GPT-4 API key, and then I got lit up and it felt like Christmas, okay? So you do need an API key. That's step one, okay? So you do need to be a Plus subscriber. You need to have a little bit of familiarity with IDE. It stands for Integrated Development Environment. That's basically where you run code, specifically for Python. What's new as of this week, okay? So I've been using a bunch of different versions of AutoGPT, starting with 2.0, then there was 2.1, and then 3.0. This week, as in like Monday or Tuesday, they released 3.1. And for me, it's actually been a game changer. Okay. It's been a game changer. But one of the new requirements is it does expect you to have Docker. Okay. Who here knows Docker? Okay. Now, I am a tech person. Okay. But, and I, am coder enough to be really dangerous and not that useful. Okay. But the reality is, a lot of us haven't gotten exposure to Docker, which is a containerization system. Okay. But it solves the problems that I was having. Okay. It solves the problems that I was having. And I'll tell you what, I only had to battle for 90 minutes to get Docker installed, which for me is super tolerable because AutoGPT just runs better. Why? Because AutoGPT is crazy complicated in the background. It will fire off its own development engine. It works in a virtualized environment. It will write its own code. It'll use a bunch of different commands, and it really is a sophisticated software suite, and it's growing in sophistication about every 2 weeks. And so Docker provides a means of handing over a package in a lot more controlled manner. And I am very appreciative that they made this choice, even though I was resistant to it earlier this week. Okay. Now, with that said, if you don't know any Python, you can still do this. You do not need to know Python, but what you do need to know is how to work inside of the file structure. It takes a little bit of getting used to. You have to be able to work with Git, which is essentially the way that you're going to suck in AutoGPT, and you've got to have some tolerance for battling until you cross some of the finish lines that you're doing. Okay, cool. So let's actually just go out to the web, and I want you to see where this is, just in case you're wondering, hey, where do I go for AutoGPT? So we're going to go here, and we're just going to go AutoGPT Git. So this is on GitHub. I recorded a whole course on getting AutoGPT up and running. Okay, and that's in our campus right now for people uh, who want to see a little bit about how to do it. And we have the comment, yeah, you can install Docker Desktop to make it simple, and that's absolutely true. That's actually what I have. I love it. And so I'll actually go here right now. This is Docker. This is going to be really unfamiliar to a lot of you. Don't worry, okay? There's no test at the end of today. We're here to just explore some cool new stuff. Okay, so AutoGPT running in Docker container. Okay, and it actually does make life easier. Okay, my only challenge, believe it or not, was I'm running in a nested virtualized environment, and I needed to solve some of the challenges with that nested virtualization. So Docker Desktop is actually pretty straightforward to install and things like that. Okay, so let's go back here, and the version of code that is out that I am running is the latest. And there, when this kind of made news in late March, they were in 1.0. Okay, so this is really not 1.0, it's probably 1. Something, I can't remember. When I first started playing with it, it was early April with 2.0 code. And you can see, yeah, this was updated 4 days ago, and it was pretty different. And I had to kind of claw my way through some of the installations for Docker. But you know what? I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Docker, and I am intrigued by AutoGPT. Let's just say that. Okay, so we're about 20 minutes in, 28 minutes in specifically. I'm going to halt this mess that I cobbled together in AutoGPT because I want to give you some perception or perspective on doing this from the beginning. Okay, so and got a question here. The memory system that is now encouraged is Redis, and I have a PineCon license, but Redis is a local database that is running in memory, and you can actually see that in Docker. And so no Pinecone necessary. And I actually think this solves some of the problems that I was having. So this is basically just a database, a vector database for memory. Okay. But they did change it, and it's changed for the good, 100% in my opinion. It's a lot more stable for me. And I mean, I'm running in a nested virtualized environment with containers, and it's still more stable for me. Okay, where were we? We're gonna abandon this AutoGPT task. Okay, let's abandon it. Okay, we're gonna quit, and we're gonna start. We're gonna start with this command, which is going to run my AutoGPT for me. Okay. Go ahead and press enter. And that's going to begin to fire up some of the processes. And I'm going to expand this so you can see more. So I know I got the impression that the vast majority of, like probably only 3% of you have seen this before at all. So let's take our time to see it. Okay. So little command to run it. And then it's going to tell us, for instance, this banner is worth reading the first time you run it because you might actually be running on the wrong version. I'm running on stable and not master, which in GitHub world is what you want. Okay. Yeah, and I am running it on just your own computer. There is a way to run this in Azure as well, and there's some documentation straight away if you want to run it in Azure. But expect to run this on your own computer, and my experience is you want to have it be at least 12 gigs of memory. I'm not sure that's in the requirements, but I was playing out and my 8 gig VM just was chugging on it. Okay. Uh, and we got a question. Hey, can you pipe output? Here's the deal. It's going to write your output. You can ask it to write a file, and we're going to do that today. Okay, so you don't have to worry about piping output and things like that. It'll read files and write files. So I think that's one of the most important things to pick up is that you now have the ability to have an entire ecosystem for things to happen in the background, like read a file, write a file, and it'll actually do so continuously. Okay. So yeah, we're on three. I mean, yeah. And what is it? May 19th. This just came out a few days ago. And I'm thankful. Now, the first time you run this, there won't be the prior effort that it was involved in. But you saw I was running this before. So I'm actually going to abandon that. Okay. It was probably garbage, anyways. Set some realistic expectations for this demo. It'll work. Is it going to be super useful? That's going to be up to you. But here's the deal. Okay. So, how many of you are what you would classify as knowledge workers? Knowledge workers. That term might have been coined in years prior to 2023. But in my opinion, knowledge workers are the main case for where generative AI is going to be empowering. Okay. And so if you're like, what's knowledge worker? Well, can you do more if you are more knowledgeable? Can your organization squeeze more out of you the more knowledgeable you are? Doctors, scientists, engineers, a lot of professionals would be considered knowledge workers. I got my start in IT as IT training. Yeah, knowledge is my knowledge is proportional to my output. Okay. So this is a super useful thing, super useful tool for knowledge workers, assuming it's productive. And that's a big if. That is a really big if. Okay, so I'm going to go here and we're going to have some fun today, okay? So I'm definitely the dry guy when it comes to humor and things like that. That's definitely how I would classify myself. But we're going to have some fun today, I think. And what I want to do is I was chatting with one of our team members. This is literally like something that happened a week and a half ago. And Josh was saying, I can't keep track of all the Star Wars episodes and how to watch them and things like that. I just kind of gave up. Okay. And it was really just a few weeks ago when it was Star Wars Day, right? May the 5th. So I want to show you what I'm asking it to do. And although you might be like, well, I want something that's more empowering to me as a knowledge worker. And you're probably not calling yourself a knowledge worker. Okay. Did I say May the 4th or May the 5th? Oops. Yeah. All right. Thanks for the correction. It's May the 4th. Okay. Yeah. But it was just a few short weeks ago, so that was accurate. Okay. So an AI assistant that provides guidance on how to watch all the Star Wars movies and TV shows, including releases through 2025. Provide a brief synopsis. I don't, summary. I'm sure I wrote synopsis incorrectly. Provide brief summaries of each series, and then create a markdown file with the recommendation. Okay. Now, let's break out this chat. This is something that I'm asking it to go out to the web and do some research. Okay, so first thing, ChatGPT isn't beautifully suited for that. I'm having it do current research. So if we're dealing with stale information, I'm not going to be able to see the new Star Wars shows that are going to be coming out, like Ahsoka. Okay. And then I want it to do some writing. We know ChatGPT can write really, really well. And then the final part of this is create a markdown file. A markdown file. So a markdown file is kind of like a light version of HTML. And it's not the only kind of file that you can work on. What's going to be interesting is it going to actually build me a markdown file, or is it going to build me a text file and not follow my instructions? Okay. It's 50-50 on whether it's going to follow my instructions. When I think about ChatGPT, GPT-4 is absolutely impeccable about following your instructions, or at least trying. It does a really good job. But AutoGPT is not great at following instructions. Okay? It is not great at following instructions. So I don't know if it's even gonna work. Okay, so that's gonna be my chat. And then I'm gonna go into my environment. Shouldn't have collapsed it that much. This little file area is where the files are gonna be baked. Okay, so it's all garbage, right? And that's from my prior effort that is worth deleting, and I'm not deleting anything extra because I'm not going to fix AutoGPT if I break it today. Okay, so we're going to go back and I'm going to paste in. I think that'll work. And so what's going to happen is we now trigger a new exercise. It'll come up with a little cute name for itself. Now, by the way, if you've worked with the earlier versions of AutoGPT, it used to have you write like different goals, and they seem to have gotten away from doing that. Okay, they got away from doing that at 3.0. And so if you're going, wait a minute, what about goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? No, we're just going to use it how they expect us to. And so it named itself. It's going to give it this role, and it considers itself an assistant. It is going to then derive the goals based on what I chatted with it. Okay. And then it's going to be thinking. Okay, so you see this little spinny guy? It is thinking. Now, we're not going to just watch this. It's going to be like paint drawing. Okay. But I want you to see, we don't have any files here. And I think I've got that directory. Yeah, the directory is empty. It'll probably take about 5 to 10 minutes for the first file to get written. Okay. Now the next thing is it's going to ask me to basically give it permission to burn some money. So that is a reality. If you're looking to do this on the cheap, there's not really a good way to go. Now, I haven't spent thousands of dollars of API calls, but I have spent hundreds. Okay. And so I want you to recognize this is not free. You do have to pay for every single GPT call that goes up. And so I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to give it the permission to run 30. Now, I'm not sure we even have enough time for 30, but I might be able to complete in about 10 to 15. So I'm saying, yeah, you can work. Press enter, and it actually is saying that it's written a file already. Now, I'm just going to wait because what I've noticed is it says that it'll write to a file. And honestly, it hasn't really been doing that much. So what I would say is it's probably just like super preliminary information. And I wouldn't be too excited about whatever it kicks out. And I've done this like a few different times just so we're clear. And I know that it's going to be about a 30% chance of whether it's going to be super interesting. So I tried to bound it to something where I actually do think it has a chance of success. If you read Reddit forums on AutoGPT, what people will be saying is, yeah, I'm not having a lot of success with it. I've had a lot more success, but still, it's not a home run to me yet. Okay. It's still thinking, but I gave it permission. We're going to leave that. We're going to go back to our slide deck. And I want you to think we're in a cooking show. We're letting it bake. Okay. We're letting it bake. I will return before, uh, I'll probably return twice to it. And we'll just see how far it got. So the other things that I just want to share with you are some really cool features that have gotten me a lot more excited about the the future of ChatGPT because it is absolutely the opposite of stale. Now, I was even speaking with some of the team that's really invested in generative AI, and they were saying, "Oh man, Google Bard's come a long way," and that's absolutely true. Okay, that's absolutely true. But a lot of the competitive landscape is being addressed with some of the new features of ChatGPT. Okay, so let's just call them out right here and have some fun with it. Okay, so the first thing we need to understand is there's a new with browsing feature. Okay, this is awesome. So this is super competitive with the fact that this is super competitive with respect to Bard. Okay, Bard is much more connected to the internet, which means it complements what was loaded with going out to the web. Have any of you seen this? Like, what fraction have you used with browsing? By the way, if you haven't gotten lit up, let's say you're a plus subscriber. Okay, you're a plus subscriber. If you're a plus subscriber and you don't have this, officially from the people at ChatGPT, they say that these beta features are being rolled out widely over the next few weeks. So if you don't have it yet, you will in the next few weeks, according to OpenAI. Okay. So you got to be a plus subscriber, which means you got to be forking out the $20 a month, that sort of thing. Okay. With browsing, gets across a lot of the limitations of ChatGPT. Okay. The other is plugins. Okay. Plugins. Plugins are really similar to with browsing. And we'll talk about plugins as well. But let's have a look at the with browsing feature so that we understand how to leverage it. Okay. So we got AutoGPT running. Oof. Actually, this is the first time I've seen this JSON object being invalid. That used to happen a lot more with the earlier versions, so we'll see if we can recover from that. It stores a lot of its information in JSON. Start to see unknown command. Okay, so we got in a loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rerun this. and recontinue. So it'll actually pick off from where it leaves off. Okay. And so we restarted the cooking show, if you will. We had the oven set to the wrong temperature, so to speak. Okay. But that's just one of the the real deals with AutoGPT is it'll misfire. And I'm going to say, yep, you can go 25 iterations. And we'll see. We might have to rerun the whole thing. No big deal. Okay. So with browsing. So let's just do comparison of with and without browsing. And I'm going to go without browsing. What are the new data controls feature from ChatGPT? Okay, so the new data controls feature is one of the things that I was speaking about. That's new as of April of 2023. So it actually is telling us really quite quite clearly that this is not something that it's going to be able to fulfill. Okay. I didn't use the with browsing capability. So the way to think of this is, and that's just, I'm going to trash that. The way to think of this is if you want anything new, relevant, if you want to be influenced by anything new, then you're going to need the with browsing feature. So that I've switched over. Okay. I've switched over to with browsing. Then we're going to ask the same thing. What are the new data controls feature of ChatGPT? So what's actually happening is the first thing is ChatGPT now is saying, am I being asked something that can only be answered if it's new information? Am I looking at something that demands new information? And so what it actually did is it did some web browsing for me. And last time I did this, I actually learned a little bit about some of the future of the data controls feature as well. And they mention here the ChatGPT business subscription, which was what I mentioned before. So if your business is planning on using this, then there you go. Okay. So let's go here. And just so you see, now this was actually a pretty straightforward chat, and it didn't have to do anything crazy. But so think, does your chat get hooked on to this plugin, the with browsing plugin? And so it'll analyze it and say, do I need to have some outside information or to satisfy this from a logic perspective? And it picked up on it. It usually picks up, I've seen it not fire. And so I just like rewrite my chat to make sure it's going out. So this is now your research assistant for new information. Okay. If you want latest and greatest information, you can go out there. And in a way, I could probably ask the with browsing feature to do that Star Wars thing that I was doing, and it's definitely going to work. Okay. But um, if I wanted to do something a lot more involved and sophisticated, AutoGPT is going to be way better for that. Okay. Assuming that it continues to get some attention and get baked. Okay. So really nice output, and it's going to give us some abilities to click on certain things so we can see, is this, I want to know more. And so you can click and you can go out kind of like footnotes, and it goes to this page, which has a lot of the details that we were speaking about. Okay. So if you're looking to do a search of any new information, the with browsing feature, I think, is actually a lot more promising. And I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes the norm. Right now, we use GPT-4, but it's isolated. I think based on the way that it behaves, it wouldn't surprise me if it becomes the standard for ChatGPT. We'll see. I might get that wrong, and that wouldn't offend me. Okay, so the next thing I want to hit you with is plugins. And what plugins have you folks used if you've used any? Okay. So I think what's great is we have a large audience here. I'm curious what plugins you've actually used. I think some are a little bit more like, okay, I'd rather just use the app. Like the app for Zillow, which I use Trulia, but you know. But then there's some things that are really, really cool. Okay. So user guys chatting in about Wolfram. That actually is my favorite of the plugins. And Josh is saying link reader. It's not one of the plugins that I've used. Okay, cool. Let's go out, have some fun with plugins. So the way to think about a plugin, and this is going to be rolled out pretty widely to all Plus subscribers, is this is going to allow you to put in a chat like ChatGPT, and then based on the plugins that you've entered, it's going to analyze it and say, should I be picking off some of these things to answer by my logic? So people code specifically for these plugins. So let's go to the plugin store. Okay. You can see some of the plugins that I have enabled. Okay. I'm going to scroll down to plugin store, and you can see the other plugins. And Josh says I used a link reader to open a PDF on a Honda Civic car manual and ask it questions based on that. Wow, that's awesome. That is freaking awesome. Okay. So I'm going to go to the plugin store just so you see what kind of plugins today. We're not going to hit all of them, but I want you to see there's a lot. I'm going to go to most popular because those are the ones that you should be aware of. Okay. And people are writing their own, and there are a lot. This is going to be like the App Store. Zapier is an automation tool, really good for your salespeople potentially. Open Table to make your reservations. Instacart, and I'm covering up the one that I'm going to demo, Wolfram. One of the big limitations of ChatGPT is it kind of isn't great at math. But Wolfram is amazing at math, and it's not limited to ChatGPT. It's existed for a while. And I was chatting with someone whose wife is an educator, and he's like, yeah, you don't know about Wolfram? By the way, I have a physics degree. I really wish that I had Wolfram when I was in college. That would have helped me. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to call out Wolfram. I've got that. I guess I already had that selected. Okay. So you can see Wolfram. So it means I'm going to be able to ask it for some basketball stuff. But I've got it cooked. This takes a while. Okay. Using the plugins, especially Wolfram, takes a while. So what I actually did is I baked something in advance that thought we would be getting into. And let me walk you through. Okay? Let me walk you through this. I'd like you to graph the velocity of a falling object, assuming Earth's gravity. Assume the object is falling from 2,000 feet. And this, I had the Wolfram plugin enabled. And it says, hey, physics usually uses the metric system. And I think it's really interesting that I'm so far removed from my physics degree that, I didn't think in terms of metric. But it goes through and it knows formulas. It knows formulas for, physics, and it's not limited to physics, right? That's just what I chose to test it on. And it gave me a graph. So first, isn't that super cool? It gave me a graph. But you know what? This is like excluding like friction, right? We don't keep on falling faster and faster. There is a friction component. And so I'm going to scroll down, and I asked it, hey, add in some friction. Okay. And it starts to tell me, hey, I don't know enough about, I don't know enough. You're going to have to tell me some things. So I decided, you know what? I just watched the Nike Air movie, Air, which was super cool. I was like, let's just choose a basketball. And so it says, you know what? I don't know enough about that basketball. And I said, just do it. No pun intended. And so it goes in, plugs in, and the net result is it tells me that the terminal velocity of a falling basketball is something to the tune of, I guess, 21.5 meters per second, which sounds about right to me. And it gave me a graph to show me. So imagine you don't use ChatGPT yet, but you got some kids and you need to help them out with some math work. Yeah, this could be really, really useful. You help them, don't have them do their math with ChatGPT. Okay. So, uh, so I think that's a really exciting thing. Okay, we're winding down on our time. So let's see if we got anything to show. Okay, wow. Wow. It burned through. I have no idea if it went off on a tangent that makes it super unuseful. But we see a markdown file. Good. I'm actually thrilled about that because I want you to see what kind of output it looks like. And then let's, okay, so it kicked this out. Okay. It kicked this out. And we see a lot of information. Notice the formatting of this file. That's because this is a markdown file, which is just a little bit better than a text file for this. And it starts to add in the animated series. I asked it to do that. Mandalorian, so it's starting to get some new information there. Resistance, which I haven't even heard about before. Book of Boba Fett, that's pretty new. Andor, awesome show. Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Bad Batch. And then even new stuff. Alkalite, don't know what that is. And Lando, okay? So this is like triumphant, by the way, for AutoGPT. It actually satisfied what I was hoping to do. And I mean that could have come out like if it were a cooking show, fried to a crisp or never get baked. If you've ever like baked bread, right? Doesn't always rise. And that's the way that I was halfway expecting this to be, which we always have to be tolerant. This is new tech. They even say in the documentation. The documentation for AutoGPT is super good, by the way. Okay, it's really, really well done. And so I'd want you to understand, yeah, um, they they call it experimental. What was your cost for that? Yeah, I can actually find out. So I think that's a really good question. I'll go back to my demo. And I think I bookmarked it. Didn't. API keys, billing, billing history, overview. They will tell you, I just forget. Usage, here we go. Okay, here we go. So you can see I probably spent the better part of $1 doing that, which is not crazy, right? Yeah, it's not crazy. Cool. And I'll go just so you see it on the, I'm kind of covering up the histogram here. Okay. So you get a chance to see, and I am abundantly aware now that um, I've burned about $1 worth on my credit card. Okay. Next session, we're going to talk about the code interpreter. At least I think that's one of the things that I want to share with you. So stay tuned for that. code interpreter I actually think is amazing. And so, but I could probably do a whole day on code interpreter. Okay. Whole day on code interpreter. Hey, we're running out of time. So good news is I got everything I wanted to hit you with today. If you happen to be here and you had no idea who Stormwind is, guess what? We are an IT training company. We do a lot: cloud, cybersecurity, project management, core IT, server stuff, virtualization, project management, and artificial intelligence. And we have a pretty sophisticated build plan for artificial intelligence coming out too. You can find those courses on stormwindstudios.com. That's our main website. And it's a super navigable website where you're going to be able to find whatever it is you want to find. If you want to know anything more about things that we do, classes that we offer, you think that getting somebody into a class, whether it's AI or product management, cloud, cybersecurity, anything IT related, hit up Mike Fajan. He's our enterprise sales rep who's poised to handle your queries and help you get somebody into one of our classes, maybe you yourself, and hope you find way into our classes, our campus. We've got well over 250 classes in campus with a lot coming out, including some of this new AI stuff. So appreciate all of your attendance, your participation here. You've been a really super engaging group. So thanks so much for your time. We're going to hermetically seal the session and hope to see you back for another delivery on generative AI in the coming weeks. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks so much.